Elizabeth Holmes, a 45-year-old city beautification worker, was quietly clearing an abandoned lot next to the city park. It was a gloomy morning, May 21st, 2024. The weather was dismal. Low clouds hung over the city. Her team had been assigned to clear the area for the future construction of a playground. It was a typical, routine job, one she had been doing for nearly 20 years. Just then, the excavator's bucket hit something large and metallic beneath the overgrown earth. At first, Elizabeth thought it was an old industrial barrel that had been dumped years ago. But when the excavator operator carefully lifted the object, she realized with horror that it was an old, rusty refrigerator, its door welded shut. The rust had almost completely eaten away the paint, but she was certain that it had once been white. The thing she had found had been lying there for 14 years. The refrigerator was surprisingly intact, despite the time it had spent underground. The most disturbing sensation, the feeling that this was not just ordinary garbage, pierced Elizabeth to the bone. This discovery would forever change a 14-year-old mystery that had tormented the families and community of the town. Elizabeth had no idea that this ordinary morning would become the most disturbing day of her life. What was about to be discovered had remained hidden for 14 years, waiting for this moment. In a few minutes, a decade-long secret would finally be revealed. The town would never be the same after this discovery. It was a warm summer day, July 12, 2010. The sun shone brightly over the city park, filling the air with children's laughter and the chirping of birds. The park was a favorite recreation spot for residents, a green oasis in the middle of the urban hustle. Trees offered pleasant shade, and the playground was always full of energy. 7-year-old Sofia Petrova was one of those children. She had come to the park with her mother, Elena Petrova, and her younger brother, 4-year-old Maxim. Sofia was a cheerful girl with long, fair hair and bright blue eyes. She loved playing hide-and-seek and exploring every corner of the park. Everyone who knew her admired her dreamy nature. That day, Sofia asked permission to go further away from the playground to look for treasures among the old trees on the edge of the park, near the abandoned lot. Elena, busy with her younger son, who was being fussy, gave her permission, asking her not to go far and to be careful. It was a common permission she gave her independent daughter. Sofia promised to be careful and quickly went back. About 30 minutes passed. Elena looked up to call Sofia, but she didn't see her. At first, she thought the girl was simply well hidden or had gone to the fountain. She called Sofia's name several times, but there was no answer. Anxiety began to rise in Elena's chest. She went around the playground, then headed towards the trees where Sofia had gone. The search quickly turned into panic. Maxim, sensing his mother's anxiety, began to cry. Elena turned to other parents in the park for help. Within an hour, dozens of people had joined the search. The police were notified, and soon the park was filled with police cars and sirens. The air was filled with tension and fear. No trace of Sofia was found. Her little pink sandals, which she had been wearing, had disappeared with her. It seemed as if she had vanished into thin air. There were no witnesses, no note, no signs of a struggle, only emptiness and silence. That day became a dark chapter in the town's history. Days, weeks, months passed. Sofia Petrova's disappearance became a national news story, but over time, public attention faded. For the Petrova family, however, every day was filled with agony and uncertainty. Elena stopped smiling. Her husband, Sergei Petrov, tried to be strong, but the pain of losing his daughter was devouring him from the inside. Maxim, too young to fully understand why his sister had not returned, often asked about her, which further broke his parents' hearts. Years turned into a decade. Sofia Petrova's case went cold. It lay on the shelves of the police station, covered in dust, like her family's hopes. Many in the town believed that Sofia had either run away or had been the victim of an accident, her body never to be found. No one could have imagined that the truth would be far more sinister. Meanwhile, a dark secret was lurking in the shadows of the city park. Sofia Petrova had not run away and was not the victim of an accident. She had been kidnapped, The person who committed this terrible crime was none other than George Miller, a 52-year-old park janitor, a man everyone knew and trusted. He lived in a small house on the edge of the park and had a reputation as a quiet and harmless man. Miller was obsessed with children's toys and old things. He had turned the basement of his house into a kind of warehouse, where he stored hundreds of discarded items he found around the city. Among these things was an old, non-working refrigerator, which he had been planning to throw away. He kept it in the basement, waiting for the day he could take it to the dump. On that fateful day, when Sophia went to look for treasures, she strayed too close to Miller's house. Miller saw her playing hide-and-seek behind the trees. A terrible idea arose in his sick mind. He lured Sophia in, offering to show her real treasures in his house. The trusting girl, always looking for adventure, followed him. Once Sophia was inside, Miller locked her in the basement. First, he didn't know what to do with her. Panic gripped him when he heard sirens and realized that a search had begun. He decided to hide Sophia in the old refrigerator in the basement. He convinced her it was a game, that she should hide there until she heard his voice. He promised her that it would all be over soon, but Miller never let her out. For several days, he secretly held her captive. He brought her food and water, but her screams and crying were driving him crazy. He couldn't risk anyone hearing her. He couldn't let her go, knowing she would tell on him. In the end, Miller made a terrible decision. He welded the refrigerator door shut, sealing it airtight. George Miller was a smart and calculating man. He falsified his park patrol records to create a false alibi. He spoke to the police, expressing his concern about the girl's disappearance. No one suspected him. He even participated in the search to deflect suspicion from himself. The only catch was that his house was on an abandoned lot that was rarely inspected. Several months after the disappearance, Miller decided to get rid of the refrigerator, but instead of taking it to the dump, he decided to bury it on that same abandoned lot, where no one would look for it. He chose a secluded spot, hidden by thick bushes and trash, and, using a small piece of construction equipment that he rented under a false name, buried the refrigerator deep in the ground. He thought that this would hide his terrible secret forever. 14 years had passed since that day. Elizabeth Holmes, the beautification worker, had no direct connection to Sophia Petrova's case. She was just another resident of the town who had heard about the tragedy and sympathized with the family, but fate had other plans. Her routine work on the abandoned lot turned into something much bigger. When the excavator lifted the refrigerator from the ground, Elizabeth immediately called her supervisor and then the police. Officer James O'Connor, who had been a young patrolman at the time of Sophia Petrova's disappearance, arrived at the scene. He was 50 years old and remembered the case well. An inexplicable feeling of anxiety gripped him when he saw the old refrigerator. He knew that this object was unusual. Police cordoned off the area, and forensic experts began their work. Bomb disposal experts cautiously approached the refrigerator, fearing an explosion or other dangers, but there were no explosives inside. When the door was finally opened, the air around it filled with a musty odor and a sense of something inhuman. Everyone present felt their blood run cold. Inside the refrigerator were human remains, and among those remains were items that left no doubt. Small pink sandals, a child's hair clip with a butterfly, and a yellowed but still recognizable notebook with drawings. On one of the pages was written in a child's handwriting, "Sophia Petrova, 7 years old." Everyone who saw it was shocked. It was horrifying. But even more shocking was that next to the notebook lay a small, rusted clay figurine. It was a figurine that Sophia had made at school, depicting a person in a park janitor's uniform. She had given it to her teacher a few days before she disappeared. It was this figurine that finally linked the find to Sophia's case. When news of the discovery spread throughout the town, the public was stunned. The police immediately reopened the investigation into Sophia Petrova's case. Old files were retrieved from the archives. Everyone who had been involved in the original search was interviewed again, and suspicion soon fell on George Miller. Miller, who had continued to work as a park janitor all these years, was questioned. At first, he denied everything. He said he knew nothing about the refrigerator or the remains. But when he was presented with the evidence, Sophia's sandals, her notebook, the clay figurine, his face turned pale. He began to tremble. Under the pressure of questioning, he finally broke down. Miller confessed to everything. He told how he had lured Sophia to his house, how he had locked her in the basement and then in the refrigerator. He told of the panic when the search began and of his terrible decision to weld the door shut. He described how he buried the refrigerator to hide the evidence of his crime. His voice was devoid of emotion, as if he were talking about something ordinary. The true reason for his actions was even more disturbing. Miller suffered from a severe mental disorder, which manifested itself in a pathological desire for control and isolation. He saw Sophia as the perfect toy for his collection, something he could hide and keep to himself. His confession revealed the full depth of his illness. When the Petrova family learned the truth, their world was turned upside down for the second time. Elena and Sergei were devastated, but at the same time felt a strange sense of relief. 14 years of uncertainty had ended. They finally knew what had happened to their daughter, but the price of that truth was unbearable. Maxim, who was now a young man, learned the terrible fate of his sister. The discovery left a deep scar on his soul. The community was in shock. No one could believe that George Miller, the quiet park janitor, could have committed such a monstrous crime. People remembered his good-natured smile and his willingness to help. The contrast between his appearance and his inner darkness was unbearable. It made many wonder what lay hidden behind the facade of ordinariness. George Miller was immediately arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder. His confession, backed by the evidence found, was irrefutable. The trial was quick, but emotionally exhausting for all involved. Miller was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He spent the rest of his life in prison, haunted by the horror of his own actions. Sophia Petrova's remains were handed over to her family for a proper burial. The funeral ceremony was modest, but hundreds of people attended. The town could finally mourn Sophia and say goodbye to her. It was a bitter farewell, but it brought some closure to the tormented community. The Petrova family never fully recovered from the loss. Elena and Sergei, although they found some comfort in knowing the truth, continued to suffer. Maxim, growing up with the ghost of his missing sister, became withdrawn and found it difficult to trust people. Their lives were forever changed. They fought to make their voices heard and to ensure that such tragedies never happened again. It was decided to build a memorial to Sophia Petrova on the site of the abandoned lot where the refrigerator had been found. It was a small, quiet garden with benches and flowers, a place where people could reflect and remember Sophia. The memorial served as a reminder of her life and of the dark secret that had remained hidden for so long. The town also took steps to increase security in parks and public places. New surveillance cameras were installed, and park janitors underwent more stringent background checks. People became more vigilant, realizing that evil can lurk even in the most unexpected places. Trust, which had once been taken for granted, was now something that had to be earned. Life after the revelation continued, but with a deep scar left by the tragedy of Sophia Petrova. The memorial in the park served as a constant reminder of her short life and of the long struggle for the truth. It became a symbol of the resilience of the family and the community in the face of unimaginable loss. This story is a grim reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk in the most ordinary places. It speaks to how long a secret can be kept and how devastating the truth can be when it finally comes to light. The resilience of Sophia's spirit, even in her last moments, and the determination of those who never gave up, shine through the darkness. Sophia Petrova's case changed the town forever. It taught people to be more cautious, more aware of those around them. It also showed that even the darkest secrets can eventually be revealed, bringing pain, but also the possibility for healing and closure. This is a story of how innocence collided with pure evil, and how, even after years of silence, the echoes of the past can return to shake us to our very core.